Hi and welcome to Season 2 of Launch With Me. This is a series where I teach you how to publish and launch your books alongside me. So you finished writing your manuscript and you think that this might be the one that's good enough to publish. Well, congratulations, that's a really exciting step. But of course, now comes the time to decide which way you're going to publish. There are actually 3 different ways that you can publish your book, and these include traditional publishing, which is when you sign a contract with a publisher and they publish and distribute your book at no cost to you. Self-publishing, which is when you handle the marketing, distribution, and publishing all by yourself. And hybrid publishing, which is a little bit of both, but not to be confused with vanity publishing, which is something that you want to steer clear of. Today we're going to focus on just 2 of these pathways to help you figure out which one is the best publishing pathway for you to pursue. Let's start with the pros of traditional publishing.
So a big pro of traditional publishing is that you're going to get support as a new author. You're going to get more opportunities, more marketing help, and a dedicated team behind you to produce the book. That being said, the level of support that you get really depends on what size publishing house you have. So if you're with a small publishing house, you really can't expect the level of support that a big publisher can give you. And you'll also have to keep in mind that no matter which publishing house you're with, you will be expected to help with marketing and other aspects of authorship. That comes into the cost. So there are no upfront costs, and anyone who ever asks you to pay an upfront fee to publish your work, it is a vanity publisher and they are not a good publisher to be with. You should really run from them. But it's really important to keep in mind that there's this misconception that in traditional publishing, you don't have to spend anything. The reality is that what it costs for people to produce your book and to do it professionally is coming out of your royalties for the rest of your lifetime. So even if you surpass the amount of money that it costs to produce your book in the first place, for 10, 20, 30 years onwards, you're still going to be paying that cost through royalties so that the publisher can keep their staff and keep all their overheads running. And that is something that you really don't have to worry about if you do pay that upfront cost and do it yourself. So just something to keep in mind, but it can be a great option if you don't have any upfront costs and you really just need a step in the door to get into the industry. And finally, you will have more time to write. So this can be a huge advantage for a lot of authors who basically, they don't want to focus on the business side of things. They really just care most about the writing, and they really just want all the time and energy that they have to be able to focus on writing. So the most minimal marketing that they can handle, the minimal business side of stuff that they can handle, they would rather just have someone else do it. And this can be a perfect fit for you if that is the case.
And the cons include,
so of course, you're going to have a loss of creative control and rights because you're signing away your rights to the company. So that means that, say they get an opportunity to make your book into a movie, or they want to do an audiobook, they have complete control and rights to do that, which can be a good thing, of course. But then if it comes to creative decisions that you're not too happy about, or you decide that you want to self-publish and you want to pull the book, you will probably have to deal with some legalities there because of the fact that you gave away your rights. So this is something to really keep in mind, that it's no longer your book and you have to be happy with giving away control. Secondly, you're going to have a longer time frame both for the publishing process and for actually getting signed in the first place. So if you really have your heart set on traditional publishing, be prepared to query for a number of years, because sometimes it can take that long to get signed with the right publishing house. And it really is about finding the right publisher. It's really not ever, very rarely, a case of your work not being good enough. It's just a circumstance of timing, of, having the right publisher who has the audience for your book. It's just this process of being in the right place at the right time. And me personally, when I got signed with a publisher, my publishing house that I am signed with, they started up the year that I found them. So all the queries that I had done prior to that were useless anyway, because my dream publisher didn't even exist yet. So it really made sense that I was in the right place at the right time and they decided my book was a perfect fit. And that's the same as it's going to be for you. It's just a matter that you have to keep going and you have to be consistent to be in the right place at the right time. So be prepared to never give up. And finally, you're going to have lower royalty rates. This is just a fact. And I'm going to be really transparent with you. The average traditionally published author makes about 80 cents per book sale. So even though your book might be selling for $14.95, after it's covered the cost of distribution, of production, of all the staff that worked on it, you're left with the least amount of money because you're the one who doesn't have any overheads to manage, as opposed to bookstores and publishing houses. So you're going to get the lower cut of the deal for your creativity, for your ideas, and for all the hard work that you put into writing it. Now, I'm not saying that that money doesn't deserve to go to other people because it was a team effort, but you have to be prepared to always be making the least from the sales as opposed to everyone else. And that means that you have to sell a lot more books to make a full-time salary out of writing, when that doesn't necessarily have to be the case if you decide to self-publish. So something to really consider strongly, and especially when you're thinking about what the right choice is for you.
And now let's look at the pros of self-publishing.
So of course, you will get to maintain creative controls and rights, and you'll have final say on everything, which can be really fantastic if you're someone who really likes to have full control over how you can market and how you produce your book. So let's say that you had to settle for a cover that you didn't like of a traditional publisher. That's not going to be the case when you self-publish. Another example is that maybe you want to negotiate a special deal with a school or a bookstore to have your book stocked. You would have to run that by your publisher first if you were traditionally published, and they may or may not agree on that deal. So it really comes down to how much control you're willing to give up in your author workflow and brand. Secondly, you can get started today if you wanted to, so you don't have to wait years and years to get signed. You also don't have to wait about 2 years while your book gets produced alongside 20 other books with a publishing house. You can actually do it right now today if you had all the materials ready to go. That being said, I don't recommend that you do it today because there's a lot of other steps that come into play for a reason, and your book launch is likely to flop if you don't implement those over a period of time. But that being said, you're still going to get your book out a lot faster if you self-publish as opposed to traditionally publishing, and it's not going to take as long at all. And finally, you will get significantly higher royalties, and I mean significantly. There is a huge, huge difference. So I mentioned previously that when you're traditionally published, you will get an average of 80 cents per book sale. And again, this depends on which publisher you're with and how they run their company. That is the average though. If you self-publish, you can earn up to $5 per book royalty, and that makes a massive difference when you're trying to make a full-time salary out of writing, because instead of having to sell thousands and thousands of books per year, you have to sell only a very small percentage of books to still hit that goal. So that is really something to consider if you're pursuing self-publishing or considering self-publishing.
And the cons include?
Of course, self-publishing has a lot of cons as well. So first of all, you're going to have a lot of less support as a new author because you're essentially starting from scratch with zero team and zero audience. A publishing house has spent years cultivating an audience that's very niche to what they publish. So when you're starting out with no audience, you have a lot of groundwork to do before you're going to see success with your book sales. So you need to be prepared to put that work in and to hire support when you need it, instead of feeling like you have to do everything yourself or even trying to do everything yourself, because that is just not possible. Secondly, you will have upfront costs if you want to publish a quality product. And of course, you would want to publish a quality product because your readers want a quality product and you want to feel proud of what you've published. So I definitely recommend that you either save up a budget or you be prepared to pay off your investments as you go so that you can be producing quality products from day one. But you're going to need to be prepared to put those investments in upfront. And finally, you're going to have less time to write, at least in the beginning. So because you are now essentially doing 3 jobs, you're publishing, you're writing, and you're marketing, all of which are full-time jobs, you're definitely going to have less time to write. But know that you can scale your author brand over time and eventually automate and outsource a lot of support so that you can then get back to writing more in your author workflow. So that doesn't mean that it's a long-term sacrifice that you're making, but you do need to be prepared to put in the effort business-wise and marketing-wise in order to have the success that's going to allow you to actually get back to writing full-time. And it has to be something that you really want. I really recommend this pathway for people who really enjoy business in authorship, because otherwise it's really not going to be a great fit.
So as you can see, there's a lot of differences to consider, but I always encourage my clients to make a lifestyle choice decision. My belief is that both pathways are valid and both have their advantages and disadvantages, But it really comes down to what you're going to need as an individual and which pathway you're best suited to. For example, if you are a full-time mother and you have a lot of commitments and to-dos on the daily and you don't really have the time to be self-publishing a book and handling all of those to-dos, having the support of a traditional publisher can be really beneficial. But that being said, you are obligated to meet particular deadlines, and if you have trouble meeting those deadlines, if you need more flexibility in your schedule, then self-publishing can also be a great choice. So it really depends on what aspects of each different pathway you're going to find most beneficial. I would be considering your long-term goals, your commitments, and also your own capabilities when it comes to marketing and publishing and how comfortable and skilled you are in those areas. That's all for today's episode. Leave a like if you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one.